Welcome back to Podcast for Artists. Is Pinterest really a worthwhile platform for artists? What do you think?
Well, a lot of artists might be surprised to learn that Pinterest isn't another social media platform. It's more like a powerful visual search engine.
Oh, interesting. A visual search engine. So how does that actually work for artists?
Hmm. Think of it this way. Imagine a potential buyer is looking for like a specific piece of art, let's say a watercolor landscape of the Grand Canyon.
Okay.
They go to Pinterest and type in their search terms. Now, if you've created, a visually appealing pin showcasing your Grand Canyon watercolor and use relevant keywords like in your pin description and board titles, your artwork is more likely to pop up in those search results.
So it's kind of like optimizing your website for Google, but instead of words, it's visuals and keywords.
Exactly. And the great thing is that Pinterest users are actively seeking inspiration and ideas,
Right.
which means they're way more likely to engage with your art than someone just scrolling through Instagram.
That makes sense. That's a huge advantage. So it sounds like Pinterest could be a good way to drive traffic to your website or online shop.
Definitely.
But let's talk about the visuals. What makes a pin stand out on Pinterest for artists?
I think the most important thing is high quality images. Like blurry iPhone photos just won't cut it.
Yeah.
You really want your artwork to shine. So invest in professional, high resolution images that capture the beauty and detail of your pieces.
Makes sense. And I've noticed that vertical images seem to be popular on Pinterest.
Absolutely. Vertical images take up more space on the screen,
Okay.
which makes them more eye catching. They naturally draw the eye and make a bigger impact. The ideal aspect ratio is 2.3, so keeping in mind when you're creating your images.
20. Vertical, high-quality images. What about adding text to the images? I see that a lot, but does it actually work?
Yeah, it can be super effective, especially for artists. Adding text overlays can provide context, grab attention, and even incorporate those important keywords. For example, if you're pinning a watercolor landscape, you might add text that says, "Original watercolor landscape painting." This tells viewers exactly what they're looking at and helps your pin get found in relevant searches.
So you're basically creating mini advertisements for your art that are both visually appealing and search engine optimized.
Precisely. It's all about making your pins work smarter, not harder.
Now, images are one thing, but are pin descriptions really that important on a visual platform like Pinterest?
They're more important than you might think. Pin descriptions are your chance to tell a story about your artwork.
Okay.
Highlight its unique features and connect with buyers. Don't just write oil painting and leave it at that. Use descriptive language, evoke emotions, be specific about the techniques or inspiration behind the art.
So it's almost like writing mini blog posts for each pin.
Yeah, in a way, and don't forget to weave in those keywords we talked about earlier. Think about what people might be searching for,
Right.
and make sure those terms are in your descriptions.
Okay, so we've got stunning visuals, keyword-rich descriptions. What else can artists do to make their pins stand out and get those repins?
One really effective strategy is to create a variety of pins instead of just sticking to one format.
Okay.
Experiment with close-up shots of your artwork, behind-the-scenes peeks into your process, inspirational quotes about art, or even lifestyle images that feature your art in a real-world setting.
So keep things interesting, show different sides of your art, and appeal to a wider range of tastes.
Exactly. And don't forget to engage with the Pinterest community. Follow other artists, comment on their pins, repin content you love, and participate in group boards.
Group board, that's something I've been meaning to ask about. What exactly are they, and how can artists leverage them?
Group boards are like shared boards where multiple users can contribute pins, sort of like collaborative online mood boards.
Oh, interesting.
They're fantastic for increasing your visibility, networking with other artists, and reaching a wider audience. When you pin your artwork to a group board, your pin is seen by all the members of that board, which can really expand your reach.
That sounds like a great tool, especially for artists who are just starting out on Pinterest. So how do you find group boards that are a good fit for your art?
You can start by searching Pinterest for keywords related to your art niche. Let's say you specialize in abstract acrylic paintings.
Okay.
You might search for group boards like abstract art, acrylic painting, or contemporary art.
And then I'd look for boards that have a good number of followers, active engagement, and a style that aligns with my own artwork.
Exactly. You want to make sure the group board is well maintained, has a good reputation, and that your art would be a good fit for the board's overall aesthetic. You don't want your beautiful abstract painting getting lost among a bunch of cute cat photos.
Definitely not. Now, I know a lot of artists are excited about the potential for their pins to go viral on Pinterest. What exactly does that mean, and what makes a pin go viral?
Going viral on Pinterest is kind of like catching a wave. Your pin gets repinned and shared by a ton of users. It spreads organically from one person to another and reaches a much wider audience. When a pin goes viral, it gets a lot of repins, clicks, and saves, which tells Pinterest's algorithm that this is high-quality, engaging content.
And then the algorithm starts showing your pin to even more people, creating a snowball effect that can drive tons of traffic to your website.
Exactly. It's the dream for any artist looking to gain exposure and build a following.
So is there a secret formula for making a pin go viral?
Unfortunately, there's no magic bullet, but there are strategies you can use to increase your chances. The most important thing is to focus on creating high-quality, eye-catching pins that resonate with your target audience.
Right.
Use strong calls to action in your descriptions, engage with the community, and be patient.
Patience, that's key in so many areas of art and life, isn't it? It's about trusting the process and putting in the consistent effort.
Absolutely. And speaking of effort, let's address the elephant in the room. Managing Pinterest can feel like a full-time job. How can artists who are already busy creating marketing and maybe even teaching find the time for Pinterest?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll be diving into in the next part of our episode. We'll explore time-saving tips, strategies for dealing with the algorithm, and how to handle the challenges of staying consistent on Pinterest.
Looking forward to it.
Me too. But before we move on, I want to make sure our listeners know where to find more information about Pinterest marketing for artists.
If you're ready to take the crunch and start using Pinterest to promote your art, I highly recommend checking out the article, Is Pinterest Good for Artists, on marketyourart.net.
Yes, it's a fantastic resource that dives deep into the strategies you've discussed today. You'll find the link to the article in the show notes.
Welcome back to Podcast for Artists. In the last part, we talked about how Pinterest is actually a visual search engine that can help you connect your art with a wider audience.
Yeah, and we're going to dig into some of the challenges artists might face on Pinterest and, most importantly, how to overcome them. Because let's be real, Pinterest can feel pretty overwhelming, especially for artists who are already juggling a million things. What do you think?
It's true. Pinterest does require a time commitment, but there are definitely strategies to make it more manageable. One of the best is batch working. Instead of spreading your Pinterest tasks throughout the week, dedicate certain blocks of time to focus on them.
Okay.
So for example, 1 hour to create new pins, another to write descriptions, and another to engage with the community.
That makes sense. Sort of like a focused Pinterest power hour. What about the algorithm? It seems like every platform has one these days, and it's always changing. How do we deal with that?
You're not wrong. The Pinterest algorithm can be kind of a mystery, but I think the key is to stay informed and adapt your strategies as it changes. One thing that's always important is high-quality content.
Right.
Pinterest prioritizes pins that are visually appealing, relevant, and engaging.
So all that effort we put into those stunning visuals and keyword-rich descriptions actually matters.
It totally does. Another good tip is to diversify your content. Don't be afraid to experiment with different pin formats like video pins or idea pins, and try pinning content beyond just your own artwork.
Okay, like what?
You could create pins that link to blog posts about your creative process, share inspirational quotes about art, or even showcase collections of artwork that inspire you.
Okay, cool.
The key is to provide value to your audience and position yourself as a thought leader in your niche.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's talk about something that can be really discouraging. What if you put in all this work and you're just not seeing any results? What then?
It's important to remember that building a presence on Pinterest takes time
Yeah.
and consistency. Don't get discouraged if you don't see a ton of followers or sales overnight. Just focus on creating quality content, engaging with the community, and tracking your analytics.
Okay.
Pinterest gives you data on how your pins are performing so you can see what's working and what needs to be changed.
That's a good point. It's so easy to get caught up in the numbers, but focusing on making good content and connecting with other artists is important. Speaking of connecting, we talked about group boards earlier. Can you give us some more tips on finding and using them effectively?
Absolutely. Finding the right group boards is key. Look for boards that are active, have a good number of followers, and align with your art style and who you're trying to reach. Don't be afraid to reach out to the board owner and introduce yourself. And once you're in, be an active participant. Pin, regularly engage with other members, and share valuable content.
Sounds like group boards are a great way to build relationships with other artists.
For sure.
Now, we've talked about Pinterest as a tool for driving sales. Can you give us some tips on how to actually use it to sell your art?
One of the most important things is to make buying your art as easy as possible.
Okay.
When you create a pin, make sure the link goes directly to the product page where someone can buy it. Don't make them search all over your website.
Right. Streamline the process. And what about Pinterest rich pins? I've heard that could be a game changer.
They really can be. Rich pins give more context and information right on the pin. For artists' product, rich pins are awesome because they automatically show things like pricing, availability, and even a buy button.
So it's like a mini shop right on the pin. No need to click through to a website. That's cool.
Exactly. It can lead to more impulse buys, which is always a good thing.
Well, we've been talking a lot about Pinterest, but I know a lot of artists use Instagram too. How do they compare, and should artists use both?
That's a great question. They're both visual, but they're different. Instagram is more about community building and sharing your personal journey as an artist. Pinterest is more about showcasing your finished artwork and using keywords so the right people can find it.
So it's not really an either-or situation. It's more about understanding their strengths and using both strategically.
Exactly. The ideal scenario is to use both platforms to your advantage. Use Instagram to build a following and Pinterest to drive traffic and reach more buyers.
Makes sense. So what if an artist is feeling overwhelmed with managing both? Where should they start?
I'd say start with one platform and get comfortable with it before adding another. It's better to focus your energy and do one thing well than try to do both and not get results.
Good advice. So where do we start? We've covered a lot, like Pinterest being a visual search engine using keywords, creating awesome visuals and rich pins, but it can still feel kind of overwhelming for someone just starting out. What's the first step?
First things first, you got to ditch the personal account and create a Pinterest business account.
Okay.
It's free and it gives you valuable data so you can track how you're doing.
Data is definitely important, and a business account sounds more professional. What's involved in setting one up?
It's super easy. Go to Pinterest's website, click on Create a Business Account, and they'll walk you through it. You just need to enter your business name website and choose art as your category.
Easy enough. Business account check. Now let's talk about eye-catching pins. We know high-quality images are key. What are your tips for making artwork look amazing on Pinterest?
Think about what draws you to a piece of art in a gallery. Lighting is super important.
Right.
Make sure your photos are well lit and show off all the details of your work. Maybe invest in a light box or use natural light.
Okay. Good lighting can make a huge difference. What about composition? Any advice for framing the shots?
Try to capture different angles and perspectives of your art. Close-ups of interesting details or a shot that shows the whole piece. You could even add props or lifestyle elements to make it more visual appealing.
Like a cozy reading nook with a painting hanging above the fireplace.
Exactly. It's about telling a story.
I like it.
And don't forget about editing. Cropping, color correction, and sharpening can make your images really pop.
So we've got our photos looking great. What about those text overlays? We talked about how useful they can be. Any design tips?
Definitely. Keep the text short and sweet. Use a clear font that's easy to read and goes well with the image. Experiment with different positions and colors to see what looks best, and make sure the text adds to the image instead of distracting from it.
Makes sense. Now on to pin descriptions. We know they're important. How can artists really make the most of that space?
Use descriptive language and talk about what inspired the piece, the techniques you used, or the feelings you're trying to express. Don't be afraid to show your personality in the description.
So it's about going beyond just the visual.
Exactly. And don't forget those keywords so people can find your work in searches.
Right, we don't want them getting lost.
And here's another tip. Use a call to action. Encourage people to visit your website, follow you, or leave a comment. Tell them what you want them to do after they see your pin.
Okay, so guide that traffic. We've talked a lot about individual pins, but what about boards? How can artists use them to showcase their work and reach the right people?
Think of your boards as collections that highlight different parts of your art. You could have a board for each style you specialize in, like watercolor landscapes or abstract portraits, or boards based on themes, colors, or even inspirations.
So create smaller, more focused collections instead of just one big board for everything.
Yeah, and use relevant keywords in your board titles and descriptions so people can find them.
Okay,
And make sure to pin regularly.
now let's zoom out a bit. How can artists make sure their Pinterest efforts actually support their overall business goals?
Well, you need to know what you're trying to achieve on Pinterest. Do you want to drive traffic to your website, increase awareness, or get more leads?
Okay,
Once you know your goal, you can adjust your strategy.
so if I want more people to visit my online shop, I should create pins that link to my product pages.
Exactly. You could also use promoted pins to give your products a little extra boost.
Right, those are the paid ads on Pinterest. What about the analytics? How can artists track their progress and see what's working?
Your business account is your best friend for that.
Okay,
Pinterest will show you how your pins and boards are doing. You can see impressions, clicks, saves, and even website traffic coming from Pinterest. See which pins people are loving and try to do more of that.
that's so helpful.
Use the data to inform your content, choose better keywords, and just refine your whole approach to Pinterest.
This has been an awesome deep dive into Pinterest for artists. Any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
Remember, Pinterest is powerful, but you got to use it the right way. Be patient, be consistent, and experiment. The more you use it and learn what works for you, the better your results will be.
Love that. It's about the journey and always growing.
Totally. And you don't have to go it alone. There are tons of resources to help you with Pinterest marketing.
Absolutely. And for a complete guide to everything we've talked about today, check out the article, Is Pinterest Good for Artists, on marketyourart.net. You can find the link in the show notes.
It's a great place to start.
And that's a wrap on this episode of Podcast for Artists. We hope you feel ready to take on Pinterest and make it work for your art business.
Happy pinning, everyone.
Until next time, keep creating and keep sharing your amazing artwork with the world.